In the first decade of the 21st century, the Transformers brand went through many changes. Between 2001 and 2007, from Robots in Disguise to the Unicron trilogy, Dreamwave Productions comic books, IDW Publishing's comic books, the live-action film series, and Transformers Animated, the franchise had seen more major reboots, reimaginings, and brand new continuities than in the entire rest of its lifetime put together. And as the decade was moving towards its end, this was something that Hasbro aimed to change, with the creation of a unified modern vision for Transformers lore. These are the basics on the aligned continuity. The seed of the aligned continuity was planted in 2008 when Brian Goldner was appointed the CEO of Hasbro and began an effort to turn it from a toy company into an entertainment company of which toys were just a part. To this end, in 2009, Hasbro founded their own television production company, Hasbro Studios, partnered with Discovery Communications to begin plans to launch their own television channel, and founded a new division named HasLab, whose job it would be to develop the company's various intellectual properties, creating story pitches, production bibles, and concept art that would be used as the basis for future films, TV shows, and more based on Hasbro brands. For Transformers, the HasLab team, including Vice President of Intellectual Property Development Aaron Archer, Creative Manager Rick Alvarez, and others, set to work on a massive document that they called the Binder of Revelation, combining concepts from every past series to create a definitive take on the world and characters of the franchise that would serve as the foundation of Transformers media for the next decade. A new continuity in which the majority of new Transformers projects other than the live-action films would be set, achieving a new level of consistency across the different facets of the brand. Fans took to calling this new interpretation of Transformers lore the aligned continuity, after Hasbro used that word a few times to describe what they were trying to accomplish with it. The first major entry into this new aligned continuity was the video game War for Cybertron, developed by High Moon Studios and released in June 2010. The game had been in the works for a while, and HasLab collaborated with the studio to use its story to lay the foundations for their new continuity. Set in the late stages of the Autobots and Decepticons' war on their homeworld, it featured the rise to power of Optimus Prime and saw Megatron poison Cybertron with corrupting Dark Energon, which forced the Transformers to abandon their tainted and dying world. The game was supplemented by the concurrently released novel Exodus by Alex Irvine, which adapted and greatly expanded its story with further material from the binder to detail the origins of the war, recounting how Optimus and Megatron had once been friends until a disagreement over how to best bring equality to Cybertron's broken and corrupt society drove them apart. A sequel game, Fall of Cybertron, was released in 2012, covering the build-up to and launch of the Autobots spacecraft. And the sequel novels, Exiles and Retribution, followed the Transformers on their journey through space after leaving Cybertron, visiting long-lost colony worlds, and delved into the mystery of the legendary original 13 Transformers, whose story had been hinted at in other media for most of the decade, and which the aligned continuity now aimed to tell in full. Hasbro and Discovery's new TV channel, The Hub, launched in October 2010, and the following month, the animated series that would become the central pillar of the aligned continuity premiered, Transformers Prime. Its very name alluding to this new effort to create a prime Transformers continuity. Co-produced by Hasbro Studios, KO Paper Products, and Darby Pop Productions, the series was set on Earth in the present day, and featured Optimus Prime's small band of Autobots and their human allies contending with the resurgent threat of the Decepticons and their Dark Energon. Prime toys weren't released until a year later, emphasizing Hasbro's new entertainment company approach by treating the series as a cartoon in its own right first and foremost, not just promotion for a toy line. Now, there were some inconsistencies between the games, novels, and cartoon that led Transformers fans to question if they were all really in continuity with each other, especially given the heavy Generation 1 inspired approach High Moon had taken to the games versus Prime's more stylized live-action movie inspired visuals. But to focus on the inconsistencies was to miss the forest for the trees. The aligned continuity didn't aim to achieve consistency by making everything exactly like everything else. The Binder of Revelation was only an outline. Archer was very open in interviews from the start about how the teams creating the individual projects were allowed freedom and flexibility to develop their own stories. They could and would have different artistic styles and might depict certain events, ideas, or characters slightly differently. The important thing was that the broad strokes of the story based on the binder lined up. Archer called it the squint test, as in, it would all fit together if you squinted. And it did! Prime featured flashbacks to key events from War for Cybertron and Exodus, while Fall of Cybertron went on to feature several references to Prime, with the novels also establishing additional connections between game and cartoon. HasLab had tried to convince IDW Publishing to reboot their comic books to become part of the aligned continuity, but they had turned the idea down, unwilling to throw out the many years they had invested building their own universe. But they would publish several tie-in miniseries for the cartoons and games that would further strengthen the ties between them. Still, it's fair to say that the course of the aligned continuity didn't run smooth. The HasLab team had an epic vision for it, planning for it to grow to become a huge shared universe that would incorporate all their other brands, from G.I. Joe to Mask, Stretch Armstrong, and even Candyland, teased in a one-shot comic book titled Unit E, given away at New York Comic Con 2011. But not everyone was on the same page as them. High Moon had been a cooperative partner, willing to play along with the larger aligned objective, but the cartoon creators were more prone to pushing back, naturally desiring to get out from under the restrictions of HasLab's binder and do their own thing. An early example of such a disagreement came during the development of a second Transformers cartoon for the Hub, Rescue Bots. Based on a line of preschool-age toys Hasbro had in the works, this younger audience's show was another Darby Pop co-production, and centered on a group of non-combatant Autobot rescue workers, and the adventures they had with the Burns family of emergency responders. HasLab hadn't conceived of the series as being part of the aligned universe, but others involved in the development process argued, quite logically, that it only made sense to have two cartoons from the same brand being broadcast at the same time on the same network share continuity. And so, contrary to HasLab's plan, when Rescue Bots premiered in late 2011, it was treated as being in continuity with Prime, and would even feature crossover guest appearances from Optimus and Bumblebee. This phase of the aligned continuity came to an end when it was decided to conclude Prime after 3 seasons, due to a combination of factors including the show's ballooning budget and the Hub itself suffering lower than expected viewing figures. But even getting to the finish line wasn't easy. HasLab and the show creators together planned for the 3rd season to be set on Cybertron and to feature the Star Seekers, a crew of space pirates who had been introduced in the novels and the toy line ahead of their television debut. But these plans were completely derailed when a new design director was appointed to the Transformers toy line, who abruptly took the line in a whole new direction centered around the addition of the Predacons, a race of prehistoric Cybertronian dragons, along with a new subtitle, Beast Hunters. The cartoon's creative team had to massively rework the season to incorporate as much, or perhaps as little, of the new toy material as they could, while also resolving their ongoing storyline. Hasbro, meanwhile, began a round of downsizing in early 2012, citing underperformance in their US and Canadian branches. Alvarez has speculated that the real blame lay with the amount of money the company had sunk into the Hasbro movie Battleship, which went on to bomb at the box office that summer, losing $150 million. But whatever the reason, among the layoffs, HasLab was shut down and several of the team let go, and without them to see it through, the grand plan they'd envisioned for the aligned continuity quietly fizzled out. The final season of Prime was broadcast in 2013, and at the end of the year, a guidebook was published titled The Covenant of Primus, which chronicled the entire aligned history from the dawn of time to the end of Prime, a move that really felt like it was marking the end of an era. In what was presumably a coincidence, Hasbro's Japanese partner Takara Tomy also chose this moment to break from the established order. They opted not to import the final season of Prime, and instead developed their own alternate take on the Beast Hunters premise in a short original series titled Transformers Go, set after the second season's cliffhanger ending. It featured a cast of original Japanese-themed Autobots battling the Predacons for the power of the time-twisting Legend Discs. And it meant that, even in the broad strokes, the aligned continuity could now no longer be claimed to be a single timeline. In a further sad coincidence, a large chunk of High Moon's staff were laid off by their parent company Activision, ending any plans for true sequels to the video games. Assets from the existing games were half-heartedly recycled to create the subpar midquel Rise of the Dark Spark in 2014. An online multiplayer game being worked on by Jagex, intended to function as a prequel to Prime, was cancelled after years of troubled development. And finally, towards the end of 2014, Hasbro pulled the plug on the hub, ceding majority control of the channel to Discovery, who rebranded it Discovery Family. However, none of that meant that the aligned continuity itself was dead. It just meant the beginning of a second era, as new cartoons set in the universe continued to be produced for the rest of the decade. In 2015, Robots in Disguise, a sequel to Transformers Prime, was broadcast on Cartoon Network. It followed Bumblebee as he led a team of young Autobots rounding up escaped Decepticon criminals on Earth, and lasted for 3 seasons until 2017. This new series crossed over with Rescue Bots in bigger, more explicit ways than Prime had, but in other ways continuity got a lot looser, as illustrating the way that HasLab was no longer around to help guide things, characters who were already supposed to exist in the aligned continuity, like Sideswipe and Grimlock, appeared in this series in irreconcilably different forms. Rescue Bots itself, meanwhile, proved a huge success and would continue to run on Discovery Family until 2016, ultimately lasting for 4 full seasons and 104 half-hour episodes, the single longest-running Transformers cartoon ever. It then received its own sequel in 2018, Rescue Bots Academy, in which the heroes taught the next generation of Rescue Bots. The aligned continuity didn't reach any kind of big dramatic end. Hasbro just started making new cartoons that weren't part of it. The same year Rescue Bots Academy premiered also saw the debut of the first non-aligned TV series in nearly a decade, Transformers Cyberverse. Though efforts were still made to achieve a loose brand consistency by having the two shows share certain character designs and voice actors. They weren't in continuity with each other, but a casual viewer might think they were. The end of Academy after 2 seasons in 2020 seems to have marked the quiet end of media set in the aligned continuity after an impressive 10 unbroken years of new stories. But the 2021 release of a new Rescue Bots adjacent toy line named Dinobot Adventures indicates we can't be 100% sure that it's over for good. Though HasLab's ambitious vision for the aligned continuity didn't work out, it's turned out that it really did succeed at its larger objective. The aligned universe itself may no longer be the setting of Transformers media in the 2020s, but the basic broad strokes history it established, the tale of the 13 Primes, of a golden age in which Cybertron had colonies on planets across the galaxy, of a corrupt system rife with inequality that Megatron began a war to tear down, putting him at odds with his former friend Optimus Prime, culminating in a Cybertron left dying that the Transformers were forced to abandon, has remained the definitive modern Transformers backstory, and has continued to form the foundation of every major new series since, creating the sense of consistency across the franchise the aligned continuity had striven for, just without the headache of making everything have to be in continuity with everything else. And while HasLab may be gone, though its name is being reused today for Hasbro's online crowdfunding platform, it was only ever one part of Brian Goldner's efforts to transform the company, efforts that weren't stopped by stumbles like the failure of Battleship or The Hub, with the company later acquiring Irish animation studio Boulder Media and Canadian entertainment company Entertainment One to further expand into the entertainment sector. Goldner stepped down as CEO in 2021 and passed away shortly afterward, but his tenure and the continuity it introduced has already gone down in history as a time of great success, great failure, great change, and great alignment for our robots in disguise. And those are the basics on the aligned continuity. Like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this look at Transformers history, and share your thoughts about this continuity's different series and its successes and failures in the comments. That's it for 2021. Happy holidays, and I'll see you all in January for Obscure Characters Month 2022.